Good morning, everyone, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here. It's my second visit to Taiwan. I was here in 2019 when IFOAM Asia held its Asian Youth Forum in New Taipei City. And that time, I was there just for 3 days and just in a hotel room. So this time it's been fantastic because I've been here since the 10th of April, and we visited many counties, townships, and it has been amazing to visit many of these places and to meet with many of the government officials. Their commitment to organic agriculture is huge. And they are making not just a short-term commitment, they are making a long-term commitment. The passion with which they are pursuing it is amazing to see in this country. We've been visiting so many of these. Many of these counties are led by women, and their passion is amazing to see that. So we just hope that this continues to grow, and what Professor Chen was talking about, that the commitment of the national government to be able to move much further along these lines is also amazing to see. So today I will, though the topic is a very big topic of talking about carbon neutrality and organic farming, I will focus a lot on explaining some basic concepts of organic farming. I think many times we just take organic farming sometimes in a very technical sense, and we make it very complicated. But I think it's very important for us to understand the basic concepts of organic agriculture, to understand also what you heard Karen Mapusua talking, the institutional structure that exists worldwide to promote organic agriculture. And I think that's very important because you just cannot have a random growth unless it is supported by a structure which allows to support, promote, advocate. I think it's very important because we need to advocate organic farming at a state level. So there are many institutions that work at the ground level, but I think it is all brought together at an international level when groups, individuals come together. I stand in IFOAM Asia, but we had a video presentation by Karen, my super boss. Yeah, and so I think it's important for us to understand that IFOAM exists internationally. Its head office is based in Bonn, and there are close to 900 members all over the world. It celebrated last year, it celebrated 50 years, and we had a huge celebration in Korea. What is important to understand is that this institution as an international body was able to keep and build the organic movement over the past 50 years. And so right now we have these regional bodies, each continent. So we have IFOAM North America, we have IFOAM Latin America, IFOAM Asia, and similarly in other parts of the world. And all of these regional bodies together make up the larger body of the IFOAM Organics International. As a regional body, I think its vision of IFOAM Asia is very important. Asia is such a diverse continent, starting all the way from the Middle East, all the way to Japan. Yeah, and on the Middle East, you have many of these desert countries, Iran, Iraq, and then we go through South Asia, which is India, Bangladesh, and then we move to the eastern side. And each of these countries, areas, regions are so diverse, so rich. And I think IFOAM Asia has a great vision to be able to bring all of these regions together, these countries together, these geographies, these eco-regions together, and for us to be able to not only understand, but to be able to appreciate each of these regions. Yeah. The principle of organic, yes, we have a definition of organic, I'll come to that. But I think agriculture which gives you life, and I think that's very important. Agriculture just doesn't exist just by itself, but unless it provides life, and what Professor Chen was talking about, life to you as an individual, as a family, as a society, then only it makes sense. And so organic agriculture tries to bring that life not only to human beings, but also to the environment around us. And I think that's what organic agriculture in a larger concept means. It's very important, again, what Professor Chen was talking, and I reiterate that. The family as a unit, family farms. Millions of farms around the country, around the world, are family farms. In my country, in India, if it's not families, these farms will not exist. It is families that bring together labor, the effort that goes into keeping these farms together. And so that's what IFOAM Asia, as a vision, it tries to bring all of this together. As its mission, yeah, it wants to improve conditions not only of farmers, laborers, who make up a very key component of farms, women, indigenous, and other groups. Yeah, many times when we talk of organic farming, we focus ourselves very narrowly on just saying farmers. Yeah, but there's much more than farmers. I mean, in my area, we work with indigenous communities, and these indigenous communities, farming is a very small part of what they do. They are hunters, they are gatherers. We tend to, I'm using the word hunters, we tend to degrade these terms. I think these terms hold value. They've been doing it for thousands of years. They gather, they harvest. And I think we need to understand organic agriculture in that entirety, not just in an agricultural field. Yeah. As its mission, IFOAM Asia wants to restore nature's balance. I think in many farms, in many areas, that balance is gone. And I keep referring back to Professor Chen because he, in his talk, he covered such a large swath of topics, and so it's just a reiteration of what he said. Yeah, it's very important that farming just doesn't remain in a very singular space. It creates a society that is able to function in a sustainable manner, not only for the present but for the future. And I think that's very important for all of us to remember. And so we have IFOAM Organics International. At an international level, I think it plays a very important role because it is able to create policies, it is able to create an agenda for many states, for many countries. Yeah, and IFOAM Asia then takes that forward at a regional level. Talking about this topic, agricultural practices, they have a huge impact on the environment. And IPCC says that 25 to 30% of greenhouse emissions happen or take place due to agricultural activities. And we need to understand that, and if we have to achieve carbon neutrality, organic farming is a viable solution. It makes sense when you take up organic farming. Yeah. And so, what is agricultural carbon neutrality? And it means we need to balance these greenhouse emissions, yeah, with a huge amount of sequestration that has to take place, carbon sequestration that has to take place. And it is not easy when we just talk about the emission and a sequestration. There is a huge cycle that needs to be put in place that is able to achieve this. There are many ways that we can do that on our farms. You plant the right crops, you improve soil health. Again, these are all, we don't have any of these things that I'm talking about. There's not one solution. The approaches can be very different in different contexts. And I think we need to take solutions which are appropriate to that area, to that community, and then work on the answers. Yeah. Importantly, that it has to benefit planet and people, both go together. And so the large agricultural sector, I mean, there are huge commodities in that, and they have to be part of that approach in achieving carbon neutrality. It's very important that when we talk about carbon neutrality, is again, we don't get stuck just to numbers, just to that approach that we have, but we figure out, or we remember that it talks, that it at the end point, there is biodiversity that has to be maintained. There are people whose hunger has to be addressed. We can't have hungry people and we say that we have achieved carbon neutrality. That doesn't make sense. We have not reached anywhere. Yeah. And so, and people need to have food in their houses. Again, what Professor Chen was talking about, having a family that has secure food on their table, not for today, but for future generations. I go a little bit back again to organic agriculture, and just to give you this definition, this is the definition of organic agriculture. Many times we tend to forget it, and we tend to reduce organic agriculture to a set of do's and don'ts. Most of the time it's don'ts. Don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. And then it's organic agriculture. No, organic agriculture is a huge system which takes care of many things. So it talks about soils, it talks about ecosystems, and it talks about people. Yeah. And if you read the definition, it's not just one line. It says it relies on ecological processes, biodiversity, and cycles adapted to local conditions. Organic agriculture combines tradition. Yeah. Many times we again downplay tradition, but in Asia, tradition is a very important part of our culture. Yeah. And we need to remember that. Innovation and science, I mean, all of these go hand in hand together. It's not isolated. Yeah. To benefit the shared environment and promote fair relationships. At the end of it, fair is a very important part. It's not advantage to just one set of people, the private sector, that takes an advantage out of this just by ending up in trade. Yeah. It has to be a fair relationship all the way from the farmer to the customer, and that's a huge chain. There are many people involved in it. And so farming is just a starting point. Yeah. But by the time it reaches the customer, all of them have a fair share in the entire process. Yeah. At the end of it, a good quality of life for all involved. So the organic agriculture definition is so vast. Yeah. And it talks about so many things. And I want to emphasize the 4 principles of organic agriculture. And these 4 principles are very important. Again, when we talk about organic agriculture, we get very focused on standards. We become very focused on criteria and all of that. But there are basic principles that we need to keep in mind. And these principles came out of an entirely collaborative process of groups, individuals all across the world when we talked of organic agriculture. Principle of health. And all of this derives from the definition that we talked about, that it should sustain and enhance. It's not a question of today, but for tomorrow also. Sustain and enhance the health of soil, plant, animal, human, and planet as one and indivisible. That is very important. Not one at the cost of another, but all together. Because we have one planet only. The principle of ecology, based on living ecological systems and cycles. And so whether it is farms, whether it is indigenous communities, whether it is forest people, whether it is people, fisher folk, all of them have their ecological cycles. And again, what Professor Chen was talking about, that at the rate at which we are consuming, we may run out of many things very soon if we do not work along with the cycles of nature. Principle of fairness, I talked about that earlier, that there is fairness with regard to the common environment and life. Last one is a very important one. It's a principle of care. Most of the time, as human beings, we are only extracting. We are only taking for ourselves. And so this principle of care, that we do it in a responsible manner, organic farming, agriculture that we do, the processes that we put in place, that it is not only for the present, the health, but it is for the future generations, for the children of tomorrow. There are many students here from the universities. Do they have the opportunity to be able to enjoy life to its fullness in the next 30 years, in the next 50 years? And that's, together, these four principles make up the basic foundation of organic agriculture. There are lots of benefits. I've just put down a few of them, but it promotes healthy soils. We grow crops, we have livestock, and there's so much more happening when we do rotation, intercropping, when we do organic agriculture. It has its challenges too. Many times there's no understanding in many areas, and we try and then try out completely something different which doesn't make sense. Resources sometimes can be a challenge, not only financial, but also knowledge in terms of growing, in terms of practices. And in many places, labor is also a challenge. Greenhouse emissions, and as I said earlier, 25% is from agricultural emissions. Livestock is also a major contributor there. And so methane becomes something that needs to be dealt with. And if we are talking about organic agriculture, much of this is dealt with and reduced when we talk of organic agriculture. And so when you compare between conventional and organic farming, there is a huge difference, whether it's fertilizer use, pesticide use, the tilling that happens, and the livestock that are involved there. And so organic agriculture, there is a huge amount of carbon sequestration that happens there because of the processes that you follow, the kinds of crops that you put in, agroforestry, which is very important in many areas, especially in Asia. It makes a lot of sense when we have small farms. We have different climatic conditions that we are able to put that into practice. And so I want to end with saying that, we can't put the entire burden of talking about carbon neutrality on organic agriculture. That's one part of it. I think what we tend to forget is that there is a huge consumption pattern that we have become used to. And we don't want to change that. And if we don't do that, you can't just expect organic agriculture to solve the world's problems. It has to work hand in hand. We need to start thinking of how we consume, and because of the comforts that we would like or the lifestyle that we want to maintain, we don't want to give up anything. But then we want to talk about all of these issues. So I think it's very important that we put these two together and then talk about, how emissions are going to reduce, how neutrality is going to come. Yeah. And lastly, the amount of food wastage that we do. Every day, the amount of food that is wasted. We produce and then we waste. Wow. We become insensitive to the amount of food that we waste, the consumption that we, the patterns that we have in our consumption. And I think we need to put all of this together, and then only we can move forward. So thank you very much for giving this opportunity, and hope we have a great workshop together.